Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're still with you and our continued coverage here on Now TV International. And we're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest, Mr. Abdellatif Wahba, the journalist. It's a very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Abdellatif. Now, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi attended a conference in Paris yesterday aimed at supporting the transitional phase in Sudan, and he spoke about the importance of this phase, not just for Sudan and Egypt, but for the region and the continent as a whole. Your comments, sir.
Yes, of course, as you know, that the Egyptian-Sudanese relations is historic, and as you know that Egypt supported Sudan in its movement during the period since the approval of the previous president al-Bashir. And also Egypt supported Sudan in international society concerning the efforts to scrap Sudan from the terrorism list or the blacklist, and also supported Sudan in its development and also its transitional period. As you know, Egypt also, as President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi participated in the international conference to support Sudan. He presented his vision also and the Egyptian visions to push Sudan for a stimulus package from the international society. As you know that, for example, France scrapped about $5 billion in debt, and also he urged the international community to have the same behavior to support Sudan and support the Sudanese people in their effort for a new era.
Absolutely. We saw Mr. Abdellatif, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi highlighting, the necessity that the Sudanese parties themselves lead the effort in establishing peace and stability in the country, and he hailed the Sudanese transitional government's achievement. How do you see the Sudanese leaders progressing so far, and how would, assisting them on an economic front further allow for the development of the nation?
Of course, as you know that this area in Africa suffered since a long time from terrorism, from the terrorist attacks, and as you know that some affiliated groups fled from Syria to the African countries like Libya, like Mali, Niger, Chad, and so on. So Egypt, as you know, that warned from this affiliated terrorist group, and asked the international community to support the Egyptian vision and also the African efforts to such terrorism groups. The African countries didn't only suffer from these groups, but also the European countries itself. So President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, as you know, has a historic message to the international community to support the African countries, especially Sudan, and so on. Because the stability of Sudan and Libya is a part of the Egyptian stability.
Absolutely.
It's a part of the Middle East stability. And also it means that stability for the European countries themselves. They suffered from the tourist
Absolutely. Mr. Abdellatif, the Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok told the conference, that Sudan is a rich country. It wasn't looking for handouts, but rather for investments. And this is a very important message. How do you see, this response, and how would the investments by other countries in Sudan really assist it with its economic recovery?
As you know that after the United States and the international community scrapped the Sudan from the first list.
Yes.
This is of course paved the way for the Sudanese development, for the Sudanese economic prosperity path. As you know that this stability and development needs more investment in Sudan. During the last 2 or 3 decades, as you know that the international community and the international institutions,
yes,
even the international companies, afraid from investing in Sudan itself. Now, Sudan takes its state rights, and they have international recognitions now in the international society. So they are launching a new economic reform program. As you know, they are in talks with the IMF, with the international financial institutions, with the World Bank, and with the African Development Bank. This is, of course, will be a new certificate for Sudan to attract the international companies to invest in Sudan itself. Because, as you know, that the Sudanese people, they suffered during the last 2 decades from poverty, from unemployment rate, from deterioration of the social life, and so on. Now, they are ready to receive the international companies and the international institutions they are wanting to invest in Sudan. And Sudan itself, as you know, they described it as the basket or the food basket of the African continent.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Abdellatif, we're also speaking about the attendance today of many African leaders and heads of, multinational lenders that are to attend meetings to find ways to really finance the African economies that have been severely hit as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as a discussion on handling the continent's billions of dollars in debt. How important would this meeting be, and how could this really assist African nations in its recovery efforts?
As you know that Egypt, the President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is the first one in the African continent that they called for the justice of distributions, yes, of the COVID-19 vaccinations in the and he asked also the international community, the United Nations, the World Health Organizations, to give an equal portion for the African continent. This is, of course, as you know, that the COVID-19 is not only a pandemic, but it will be also an economic obstacle in the African continent. So I think Egypt, with the partners in the African continent, I think they will practice more pressures and more efforts to get a suitable portion from the vaccinations to the African countries. This is, of course, the great step for the administrations when asked the World Health Organizations to get vaccines for the African countries.
Right, absolutely. I'd like to thank you very, very much, our guest, Mr. Abdellatif Wahba, the journalist. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for joining us here on Now TV International. And for our continued coverage, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron on Monday at the Elysee Palace, where he reiterated Cairo's firm position on the urgent necessity of the cessation of violence in Palestine as Israeli aggression against Gaza stretches for an 8th day. We have more details on this meeting in this report. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with the French President Emmanuel Macron at the Elysee Palace in Paris on Monday, discussing the ongoing Palestinian-Israeli conflict and the controversial Ethiopian Renaissance Dam issue. Presidential spokesman Bassem Radi said both leaders discussed ways to revive the peace process between Palestinians and Israelis, adding that the French president expressed his country's great appreciation for the Egyptian efforts. President el-Sisi affirmed Egypt's steadfast position in this regard, calling for putting an end to acts of violence as soon as possible and reaching a just and comprehensive solution that guarantees the rights of the Palestinian people and the establishment of their independent state in accordance with international references. As for the Ethiopian dam file, President el-Sisi affirmed Egypt's adherence to its water rights by reaching a fair and binding legal agreement that guarantees clear rules for the process of filling and operating the dam and achieves the common interests of all parties. He stressed that Egypt will not accept any harm to its water interests. The meeting tackled other regional issues of Syria and Libya, besides tackling the ways of enhancing bilateral relations, particularly in the economic and military fields. Macron also praised Egypt for combating terrorism and extremism ideology and achieving security and stability in the entire region.